Imagine waking up, confined in total darkness. The air is thinning. You scream for help, but the only response is laughter. That is exactly how 42-year-old Jorge Torres Jr. spent the final moments of his life. The response began on the afternoon of February 24, 2020. A frantic 911 call dispatched Orange County deputies to an apartment complex in the quiet suburbs of Winter Park, Florida. The caller was Sarah Boone. When investigators arrived, she presented a story that sounded like a tragic, alcohol-fueled mistake. She claimed she and her boyfriend, Jorge, had been drinking wine and decided to play a game of hide-and-seek. According to Boone, they thought it would be funny if he hid inside a suitcase. She zipped him in, went upstairs, and accidentally fell asleep, leaving him behind. But the reality downstairs was far less playful. First responders discovered Jorge Torres Jr. completely zipped inside a dark blue suitcase. He was unresponsive and pronounced dead at the scene. On its face, the scene was a bizarre accident. 2 intoxicated adults, a terrible lapse in judgment, and a fatal outcome. But experienced detectives look at the physical evidence before they listen to a suspect's story, and what they saw immediately pointed toward homicide. The medical examiner's autopsy told a story of violence, not a game. Jorge's body showed obvious signs of a struggle. Investigators documented long nail scratches across his back and neck, alongside blunt force trauma to his skull, shoulder, and a busted lip. To verify Boone's timeline of the previous night, detectives needed digital evidence. Boone willingly signed a consent form, handing over her iPhone to the Orange County Sheriff's Office. Digital forensic investigators plugged the device in and began a full data extraction. Buried in the phone's memory, they recovered 2 user-recorded videos from the exact hours Jorge was trapped. Boone had handed the police the very tool they needed. The footage pulled from that single device instantly dismantled the hide-and-seek alibi and revealed the true nature of what happened in that living room. The first video begins at 11:12 p.m. The camera points downward at the blue suitcase. Inside, Jorge is physically pushing against the fabric, repeatedly yelling Sarah's name and telling her he cannot breathe. Boone does not help him. Instead, she laughs. She taunts him, telling him, "That's on you," and frames his confinement as a calculated punishment. She tells him on camera this is what she feels like when he cheats on her, and what she feels like when he chokes her. The torture did not end there. 11 minutes later, at 11:23 p.m., a second video begins. Jorge is still trapped inside, still calling out her name. The suitcase has now been flipped over and moved to a different side of the living room, proving he was left to suffer for an extended period. When detectives confronted Boone with her own footage, her demeanor shifted. She watched less than half of the video before looking away. She claimed she had no memory of recording him, blaming her actions entirely on the consumption of alcohol. Law enforcement did not accept this. Investigators concluded her actions were imminently dangerous and demonstrated a depraved mind without regard for human life. The interview ended. Sarah Boone was not allowed to leave. She was officially booked and charged with second-degree murder. Boone recorded those videos to mock her boyfriend while he was helpless. Instead, her smartphone became an unimpeachable digital witness, capturing the exact moments she chose to let him suffocate. Getting that evidence in front of a jury took more than 4 years. The massive delay wasn't caused by complex forensics but by the defendant's relentless hostility toward her own legal representation. Boone burned through 13 different attorneys. She repeatedly insulted them, calling one a dud and a buffoon, forcing lawyer after lawyer to withdraw. The breaking point arrived in the summer of 2024. Boone submitted a 58-page handwritten manifesto to the court, detailing her endless complaints about her attorney's supposedly unprofessional and snotty attitudes. The judge issued a rare and severe ruling. He determined that Boone's conduct was so outrageous and manipulative that she had legally forfeited her constitutional right to a court-appointed attorney. She would have to face a murder trial alone. Desperate, Boone circulated a hand-drawn advertisement from jail and eventually secured a 14th lawyer just in time for trial. But suddenly, the defense strategy completely changed. She abandoned the hide-and-seek accident story entirely. Taking the stand, Boone now claimed she suffered from battered woman syndrome, arguing that zipping him in the suitcase was an act of self-defense against years of abuse. The jury watched her constantly shift her story to fit the moment. Her courtroom theatrics and evolving alibis completely eroded her credibility, leaving her unable to escape the timeline she recorded with her own hands. Prior to trial, Boone rejected a plea deal that would have sentenced her to 15 years for manslaughter. It was a massive miscalculation. After years of legal gamesmanship, the jury needed less than 2 hours of deliberation to return a guilty verdict. Ultimately, the judge delivered the final sentence. Sarah Boone was remanded to the Florida Department of Corrections to serve life in prison without the possibility of parole. For Jorge Torres's family, the end of the trial offered a measure of justice, but no real closure. During the sentencing hearing, Jorge's mother and sister delivered heartbreaking impact statements, mourning the loss of a son, brother, and father whose voice they will never hear again. They are also left with a unique psychological horror. His sister explained how simply packing for a trip is now deeply traumatic. She cannot fully close a suitcase anymore. She has to leave the zipper open a few inches, terrified by the association. Boone used a piece of luggage to execute a twisted, controlling punishment. But she also chose to record it. The undeniable digital footprint she left behind became the ultimate trap, sealing her own fate behind bars.